There we go. Okay, cool. So hello, everybody. This is the Chiasma web series. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Here we're here with Eric. And Eric, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you studied at university, etc.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Josh. As Josh said, I'm Eric. My last name is Scharpf. And as you can probably guess from my accent, I started school in the United States. We'll just say a significant time ago. And at that point in time, I started out in the chemical engineering program at the University of Delaware. And I really enjoyed the applications focus on the course. It really took you into equipment where you could really make a difference with real pieces of metal and making sure that you can do some really neat work and also understand some really neat principles that sat behind these pieces of steel that reacted and moved things and hopefully didn't blow up while you were doing so. But my timing wasn't the best, and obviously you can't control when you were born, so I graduated into a wonderfully big recession. And as a result of that, looking around at the jobs that 30 people were competing for in each case, I decided, I think I might stay in school a little while longer. So I went to grad school in chemical engineering as well. And again, going back to the side of things, I had done a little bit of research at the University of Delaware, and I really liked the idea of figuring out new stuff that people hadn't figured out before. So I got involved in a very experimentally oriented PhD thesis. And that had, to me, that really neat balance of playing with the metal. I worked in a machine shop part of the time, building some of my apparatus and soldering circuit boards and things like that to create systems that we needed to measure things and set off sequences and things like that on millisecond time scales, which at that point in time was kind of cool. And then I finished that up, and guess what? The recession. But unfortunately, I had essentially run out of anything productive I could do at school. So I took the plunge and got a job in industry, and I worked for Air Products and Chemicals, which is an industrial gas and chemical company. And it was really neat because I got a chance to put into practice a lot of the stuff that I had done. And some of the things that I thought were important were a heck of a lot less important. And I realized that it wasn't so much the new knowledge that seemed to be needed in most situations, is that there was a ton of knowledge out there. And I saw a greater need to take that just array of knowledge and try and apply it in new and different ways. So focusing on the application of existing knowledge in stuff was really the focus of my early career. And it was pretty standard. I worked, again, Air Products was a big company. They had 10,000 people in 50 countries and all of that. But it was neat because I did get to work over in the UK for a few years and do a few projects there. And after about 10 years at Air Products, a friend of mine that I knew came up to me and said, "Hey, Eric, I'm starting this company." And I thought, that sounds interesting. And at about that time, Air Products changed its focus, and I had reached a certain level in the company that friends of mine used to call the plateau club. So if you hit the plateau club in your early 30s, you might be there a while, and that really wasn't terribly exciting for me. So when Bill Goebel mentioned that he's starting up this automation reliability company, I thought, oh, that's not exactly what I do, but it's close enough. And I knew Bill and thought, well, let's give it a go. And at that same point in time, we looked at the world map, and I had gotten a little bit tired of the US, so we emigrated down to New Zealand. So this was in 2000, and yes, if you look up your history books, another recession. But so basically one thing, don't follow me on timing. If you're doing this, and unfortunately you're probably already into that following me on timing, because if you're watching this, you're probably looking at a new career and, oh wow, you've got a recession. In fact, worse than that, you've got a global pandemic. So I believe me, I've been here before 3 times so far, and unfortunately still counting in all of that. So back again 20 years ago, we started a company called Exida, which stands for Excellence in Dependable Automation. And my chemical engineering stuff was useful in that area, but it kind of shifted on the side a little bit from the goal of keeping or getting everything as efficient as possible. Instead, focusing on keeping it running. Don't design things that are going to fail. Put in some redundancy, put in some margins, and look exactly where those margins are most useful. And I got involved in a lot of multi-company projects, which was kind of neat. And what happened, I kind of started to learn now that with the applications focus that I had, where there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be applied, as I started working on these multi-company projects, I realized actually there's a lot of knowledge already applied really well in a number of cases. And what's even more necessary is communicating what's already out there in new situations. So going from the need for new knowledge to the need for applications of existing knowledge, now to the need to communicate existing applications. So that's where I tend to find myself these days, more along the lines of trying to look around, see what else is being done well, and see how that can be applied in each situation. But also look around and see what's not being done so well, and seeing where we can fix it from other things that have worked better in different areas. So it's kind of been an evolution over, again, we'll just say a number of years to take it to where we are now. And fortunately, Exida has done reasonably well. We're, I'd say we're probably got about 100, 120 people scattered around the world in various countries. But one of the really neat things about that is that since I've been with the company since startup, I'm really able to pick and choose to a frighteningly great degree the jobs that I work on. As you can probably see in the background, I have an office in the back of my house. So I commute all of 10 meters every morning. But every now and then I get to go to, we'll just say, some interesting places. My last trip was to kind of on the border between inner and outer Mongolia at a mine site called Oyu Tolgoi, and helping them figure out how to test the mining equipment and the automation in that mining equipment to make sure that when they turn it over to the mine, it's actually going to do everything it's supposed to in all of that. So that's pretty much how I've gotten from school to here.
Thank you for that really comprehensive rundown of how you got to here. But if you were in the shoes of when you were an undergrad or in high school, do you think you would have gone here? Or did you ever imagine that you would have come this far or come into this industry?
No idea. And this is something else I learned early on. It's hard enough to predict 5 years ahead. Predicting 25 years ahead just isn't going to get you anywhere. And there are so many things about trying to project that far into the future. Really just look at, all right, what's next, and focusing on making a good next step, not trying to play chess 14 moves down the way. There's computers are the only things that can really do that. But look at the next one or two moves and look at those, look at where you are, look at what those moves might give you, and also what those moves might cost you, and make them good rather than trying to figure out, okay, in 2060, I want to do X. Well, X may not exist in 2060.
Yeah, that's definitely a good insight. You said that you took into account the recession when you decided to go into grad school. Do you think you would have done it if there was no recession at the time?
No idea if there was, because I would have to figure out, all right, what job would I have gotten? I just did a couple of basic job interviews at the time, and you could pretty much tell that the recruiters were there to keep their slot open. They weren't hiring anybody, but they showed up to be nice. Oh yes, I have the connection with the university. I'll keep interviewing, but actually we don't really have any positions this year. So I have no idea because I don't know what I would have compared it against. I needed to compare grad school against something, and I didn't see an interesting job out there. So who knows?
So would you recommend people that are still considering and not sure what they want to do after they graduate with their undergrad, do you think that grad school would be potentially a good option for them?
It can be. It depends on the person. And again, each individual person is going to have a couple of choices in front of them. And look at what your own individual choices are and where they might change you or guide you, again, at that next one or two steps. And if those next one or two steps look good for grad school, yeah, go for it. If they look good for doing a year of bartending in London, go for it. Again, it's really down to your own individual situation, where you are, and what's in front of you. So I can't really make a general statement for anybody except to look at your own particular situation and figure out what your choices really are and make the best one that you can at that time.
You mentioned that earlier that you shifted slightly in terms of your specialization, and there were some technical challenges that came with that. Did you have any personal challenges that you had to wrestle with in that time?
Well, changing jobs and changing countries at the same time is a bit of a risk. My wife and I used to kid that, well, if it doesn't work out, we're eating rice for a while. If it does work out, we get to eat rice with stuff on it. So that was the thing for a little while when we were starting out down here in New Zealand, and made a few trips to Australia at the time, and we got a couple of pieces of work, started some side work at the university, and that's actually continued as well with things. But no, we tried a bunch of stuff and kept the things that worked and put down the things that didn't.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm gonna shift slightly to more industry-specific questions now. So I'm gonna ask, what in your line of work, what skills and qualifications in terms from the perspective of a potential employer, what do you really think is important for graduates to have nowadays?
Well, in my work, you really need to be well organized. In a lot of the projects that I'm on, there are 4, 5, or 6 different companies involved in the thing doing different pieces of stuff. And you really need to know how everything connects together and what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, who gives you input stuff, who you're giving your stuff to so that they can do their work. You really need that understanding and ability to organize what's going on. But also, and again, this relates to my own particular work, you need both a painstaking attention to detail and also, unfortunately, the ability to look at the big picture of things. So you need to be able to not just see the trees in the forest, but to see the bark on the tree and the beetle on the bark, as well as read the giant topographical map that shows you, all right, I'm in this mountain range in this area, the ocean's that way and the desert's that way. So there's that element of, I guess, understanding and awareness. And specifically, that doesn't relate to any individual technical field. These are skills that don't go out of style. And I could program in Fortran. Nobody cares. I know how to run an LA36 printer. Nobody cares. I know what the punch cards are. Nobody cares. That kind of knowledge, absolutely useless these days, except—
And it can be taught, right?
I'm sorry?
It can be taught, right?
Well, anything can be taught, but to me, I'm more focused on learning the stuff that's going to last. And it's those skills and the ability to understand and organize, the ability to communicate effectively. And communicating, as I said, is huge. And it's not just, can you do a good presentation? It's, can you have a good sidebar discussion in a meeting? Can you convince somebody of something over coffee? Can you write a good report? Can you send a good email that's going to get somebody to help you out when they don't have to? That array of communication skills is hugely valuable. And again, none of that is particular to any individual technology or bit of knowledge, or can you integrate by parts or something like that. It's across these different levels. And again, this stuff doesn't go out of date.
Yeah, that's really something that resonates with myself. I always think that instead of trying to learn stuff, I should learn skills rather than memorize things. And yeah, that's definitely a really good insight to have. Yeah.
Well, let me modify that a little bit. You need to learn to be very good at how to memorize things, because, and again, this is to me part of the communication, there's a heck of a lot of jargon in each individual area. And if you're new coming in and you don't know the jargon, you're going to be stuffed. You really need to learn and memorize what all the blasted words mean, or what the acronyms mean and things like that. What's a PFD? I mean, again, the answer to that, unfortunately, depends on, all right, who's asking. It could be a probability of failure on demand or a process flow diagram. So again, you will need to memorize stuff, but you'll need to be able to memorize stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It does make sense. Yeah. So when you're thinking about trying to gain those skills or gain some experience, what is the best type of experience do you think, or what comes to mind when you're looking for what graduates have done before they go into industry?
In my particular area, I look for the skills that are necessary to do well in my industry. As I said, organizational capability, the ability to pay attention to detail and see that line 17 of this spec on page 42 is wrong. And unfortunately, if you build it that way, it will fall apart. And also that actually at the big picture level, you don't really want a screw compressor here, you want a piston compressor. So it's at the big picture level and the small picture level that you need to be capable. So I look for people who have demonstrated that stuff. I look at what you've done. In my own particular area, years ago, the good engineers got put on projects. The bad engineers did paper studies. So I look for engineers that have built things. I want somebody who's done something that has been built so that they actually see it works, rather than just, oh, right, here's my nice little essay on whether or not you can theoretically get power from waves if you have a lever system. Well, no, I'd actually like to see somebody who's built a system that gets powered by waves or something like that. So again, I look for in my areas, people whose experience has been tested, if you will. And there's
Yeah.
nothing like real equipment to test the heck out of what you think.
Not just thinkers, but doers as well as thinkers, right?
Well, again, in my particular field, yes. And I'm not trying to say that there's no place for thinkers in other areas, because we really need a lot of that stuff. But in my particular field, I need thinkers whose thoughts have been proven and who have gone through that painful realization of, gee, I thought it was going to do this and it doesn't. What's wrong and how do I fix it? I mean, all of those additional aspects, and that what's wrong and how do I fix it, those skills are absolutely critical. Because, and again, I'll go back to the computer programming analogy, nobody's code runs the first time. You spend the vast majority of your work debugging, polishing, and extending, rather than the initial creative process and things like that. So I'm looking for people who have the ability to look at a situation, figure out what's wrong, or even better, figure out what's missing. Now that's tricky. And then be able to do something about it and make it work. But again, that relates to my own particular profession of engineering, which is basically making stuff work.
And it's a very fun profession, I've been told. And I'm sure you vouch for that.
For some people it is. And again, that's the other thing that I would say. Do stuff that fits with what you like. There are people who are absolutely born to be engineers. And there are people who are absolutely born to be creative fiction writers. Don't mix the two up. That's going to end badly for everybody. So it's really more a matter of finding out what your natural fun is and figuring out a way to make that pay, in effect.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna switch slightly more towards pandemic related questions, because I guess this is, especially with someone who's been through some tough times when it comes to being in a job market. What type of silver linings do you think would come out of this pandemic potentially in your industry?
Well, I work across an array of different industries. I've got everything from power plants to robotic butchers to mine sites to oil refineries. So there's a vast array of industries that I support. And fortunately, most of the time, if one industry is having trouble, another industry is doing well. So I've been able to adapt my skills to those different industries. And that's probably the key to it, and that's adaptability. That right now, there are actually a number of things that are booming. For instance, you and I are talking on Zoom. In 2016, how many people heard of Zoom? Exactly. So it's that versatility and flexibility to be ready for what's next. The old Harry Potter, to make your own luck out of things. And again, the ability to adapt and, well, I can do X. Well, that's all very nice. We don't need X right now. We kind of need Y. So fine, chop a leg off the X and call it Y.
Well, don't actually chop your leg off, of course.
No, but well, again, there's the story of the guy who got caught in a rock, and that was the only way he survived. So it comes down to look at your choices in front of you. And unfortunately, in some situations, it really is, okay, fine, the leg goes, I live. But, and again, that's hopefully not as severe a choice that most of us are going to face. but it brings out the point that you have to make the best of your current situation. And it may not be ideal, but it will be better than the other choices in all of that. So to me, it's still a matter of looking at where you are and trying to make the next move the best one that you can make.
Figure out what you need to do next and do it.
Yeah, and fine, we're in a pandemic right now. Get good at Zoom conversations. Be good at job interviews by screen. Show that you can communicate and you can do stuff, that you're independent and organized and can get value out under adverse circumstances.
So along those lines, what do you think maybe specifically the opportunities coming out of this pandemic are?
Well, it depends on which field you're in. There's a ton of opportunity in medical devices right now. I saw on the news last night that a bunch of people up at Canterbury had done some 3D printing of a cute little valve switching device that basically turns one ventilator into two ventilators. I mean, you might think, oh, wow, cute little idea. But if you're a hospital that's got 100 ventilators and you're not going to get a new one for 10 months, and Canterbury actually put this up for free, you can download the 3D print routine for this thing along with directions as to how to build it, and you can turn your 100 ventilators into the ability to support and save the lives of 200 people. So again, in engineering, it just changes. Fine, you're not doing a faster car, you're doing a new ventilator.
Yeah, so it's those transferable skills that you need that aren't specific to making cars, but the stuff that you need to be able to learn to make those cars, and then you can use those skills to learn to do other things.
Yes, but it's also the ability to see that your skills can be applied to building a ventilator switch. Because again, going back to that thinking aspect, I don't want to downplay thinking at all, because it's that creative thinking that gets you into the, hey, wow, I can do this. It gives you a new choice that you can make.
Exactly, yeah. Well, thanks for answering all those questions. That's the end of my prompts, but do you have any last things that you'd like to impart on our audience?
Well, to quote Monty Python, I'm not dead yet. But in terms of the session here, I would really say don't get discouraged. And one thing we used to have fun with, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Unfortunately, if you're bashing your head into a wall, it's going to give you a very sore head. So instead of, if at first you don't succeed, try something different. Take a step back and look at the wall, and you might not even need to go in that direction. Or the wall might end 4 meters to the right. Make a right turn. Go 4.5 meters over, and then go around the wall, if you will. So if you are looking at a dead end, take a step back and look sideways. Look up. Look down, look behind you in all of this to see what other options might exist that you hadn't considered before.
Awesome, that's really good. And we really appreciate you coming out and taking time to impart all this really, really valuable wisdom on our students. Yeah, I think a lot of people will take a lot away from this, especially myself. I've taken a lot away.
Thank you. But I'll let each student be the judge of when they want to fast forward or when they want to mute me. That's fine in all of those cases. But again, thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you and the people that you reach with all of this find something useful in my my long-winded blathering.
No, it was really good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Josh. Take care.
See ya.